Leilui Nishmat Shlomo ben Sarah, the Chvod HaRabbanim and the family. The New York Yankees, Disney, Xerox, Coca-Cola, many others. In our society, which emphasizes media and marketing, the ability to create a brand name, a name that implies far more than what the words can say, what ours can say, the ability to do that is priceless. People spend billions of dollars and years of their lives. I'm speaking on Shabbat, it's okay, you'll hear me. Spend billions of dollars and years of their lives with no guarantee of success. There is a long list of qualities that made Sam Catton Alav Shalom great, but one seems to stand out above it all. Through all that he did with his life, Sam's name became a brand. Around the world, the name Sam Catton implied tradition, excellence, quality, Torah, love, community, vision, and so much more. Rabbis of the greatest stature, Chacham Ovadia Yosef, Chacham Mordechai Eliyahu, Rabbi Shlomo Amar, Rabbi Aluf, Rabbi Eliach, Rabbi Sutton, they all looked to be associated with him, as did people of stature in the community, as did community institutions, the center, the Bikor Cholim, the Yeshivot, Flatbush, Magen David, Barkai Yeshiva, all lined up to be associated with the name Sam Catton for all that it stood for all that it meant. I mentioned to Sammy E., who's going to speak in a little while, that writing this speech was one of the most difficult things that I've ever had to do. If someone asked me to speak about Sam Catton, and I wouldn't say that I was the closest person to him, I could go on for hours for what he meant to the community, for what he meant to an individual shul, for what he meant to the yeshivot, for what he meant to his family. It could go on and on and on. But that's the beauty of what Sam was about. The books, the numerous books that Sam had created, Shalom Yerushalayim, Kol Yaakov, Shirush Bacha. Nobody calls him by those names. Everybody calls them the Sam Catton Machzor, the Sam Catton Sidur, the Sam Catton Pizmon book, the Sam Catton Kiddush book, the Ezrat Hashem Sam Catton Berachot book. Because to associate with Sam Catton was to be with greatness. It is said by many people and at many funerals and many Arayat that the deceased had earned a Shem Tov. Sam went way past Shem Tov. Sam was a brand name which I believe is the true meaning of Keter Shem Tov. How did he become this brand name? No speech of any duration could do this concept justice. But I'd like to make one point about Sam that I think summarized his entire life, the essence of his being. Sam had a love for Dikduk Hebrew grammar, which I think showed his burning desire for Talmud Torah. And I hope you would appreciate the following point. In regards to Yetziat Mitzrayim, the Torah commands us to zachor, to remember. And the same term is used for Shabbat as well as for Amalek. Grammatically, however, the Torah, one might have thought, could have used the term zichor. Zachor is a little bit of an unusual usage. Zachor, you see, is the makor mochlat, the absolute infinitive. And when it's used, it is used to add emphasis and even absoluteness. For God's people, the imperative to remember is not an ordinary one. It is absolute. Our religion has few absolutes, but the memory of our people and our berit that we have with Hashem is something that may not be compromised. It is for this reason that the imperative to remember for the Jewish people cannot be done through sheer recognition, through sheer memory. It requires mentioning, action. And Sam understood, no, he lived the concept that memory was not only a thing for the past. Sam was not a mere historian who recalls information, analyzes it, and then records it. He used the memory of that which is good from the past in order to inspire and impact the present with an eye on shaping the future. Sam combined the best of the historian, the doer, and the dreamer. He understood the great ones, of which he was one, were responsible for the task of preserving the memories of the past and using them to better the present and the future. Anytime anyone met them, Sam had a gem for them from the past. If you weren't paying attention, you could mistakenly think that this was a mere elderly man sharing some stories. But I've seen Sam often, and every word that he had was measured and careful. Each comment that he made to a person that passed him on the street, came over to shake his hand in shul, called him up on the telephone, or he called him. Every comment had something behind it. If he told you about your grandfather, it was because he wanted you to remember your grandfather and live up to some ideal that your grandfather lived. If he told someone who worked in a community organization about a story that happened 55 years ago, it was because he knew that that organization could learn today from what happened then. Nothing Sam had said was for no reason. Each and every word that he said was measured and careful. And the way that you know that is because when he didn't know, he said, without shame, I don't know. It's so hard to imagine how such a great man, a man who knew that people were looking up to him for answers, and he had so many of them. And when he didn't know, it was easy for him to say, I don't know, that's out of my league. At the funeral, Rabbi Sutton made a point that each and every one of us has to say thank you to Mr. Sam Catton. It's arguable to say that there is no one person that impacted and shaped the Syrian Sephardic community more than Mr. Sam Catton. And virtually everything that we have today that we are proud of, in some way, in some form, owes him a great debt of recognition. Lastly, to his family. On a personal note, I have to say, since I've been in the shul, and probably even a little before that, each one of you has treated me like family, and I greatly appreciate it. Many times I've heard him say that you are all special and accomplished individuals, how much he loved and was proud of each and every one of his sons and daughters, his daughters-in-law, who he called his daughters, his grandchildren, each and every one. He would go and tell you about this one and that one, what he was doing, what that was doing, and it brought him the greatest of joy. He was proud of each and every one. It is known that Keter Shem Tov is above it all. It tells us in the Mishnah, it tells us that there are three Ketarim: Keter Kehuna, Keter Malchut, Keter Shem Tov, Keter Torah, and Keter Shem Tov rises above them all. And the Maharal of Miprag asks, what is it about Keter Shem Tov that makes it rise above all other names? He answers in one word: immortality. A person who has achieved Keter Shem Tov knows that he will live on forever. I think there is no greater living example than Mr. Sam Catton. I don't know if Sam had ever read this Maharal. He may well have. But my guess is that he sensed that this was true. He devoted every moment, every second of his life, every moment and every second of his life, to bettering the lives of others, bettering the lives of the community, bettering the lives of his family. I know personally, but I have to imagine that it's true of every person in this room and many more past us, that each and every one of us will proudly tell our children and grandchildren, we knew the great Sam Catton. There's so much we have to say about him. There's so much we owe him we could never repay. All we can do is continue in his efforts that never ceased. Every moment, every day of his life, he got up and he had in mind. He could have said, I'm retired, I'm relaxing, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm going to take the day off. He never took the day off. Rabbi Aluf received 13 calls a day. Harry received calls, Morris received calls. You wonder, you should check his cell phone records, how could he have made so many calls? How could he have done so much in the course of a day? but that's what he was about. We have to remember that we have the responsibility. His immortality will live on, and the way that we can associate with his name, with his brand name, with his Keter Shem Tov, is to live for the ideals he lived, live for the community he loved. Amen.
Morai v'Rabotai, first I have to say that I'm profoundly humbled, bordering on embarrassed, that I was asked to speak today. Mr. Catton, in my mind from the time that I was young, was superhuman to me. Growing up in Los Angeles, there wasn't a great deal that I knew about the Syrian community in Brooklyn. But from the time that I knew how to read, I knew about Sam Catton. Because my father brought all of me and my brothers and sisters Mahzuri, Tolo Shalan Kippur. And the one name that I knew was Sam Catton. And I asked my father, who's Sam Catton? I opened the mahzor and I saw such a beautiful mahzor. I would sit in shul and think, what did it take to put this together? Look at the calendars in the back. I was a young kid, but I was enamored by the mahzor. And my father said, ooh, Sam Catton, he's a very great and special man. One day you'll meet him. And the first time that I was okay to meet him was in a party that we were having in my shul, face to face. And the thrill that I experienced in meeting him is hard for me to put in words. And the Yishtabach Shemo, the twist of fate, I don't know how it came or where it came from, that somehow I had a zichut to work so closely with him on his last project, the Sefer Berachot Shamayim, the Berachot book that we're working on, is profoundly, profoundly humbling. I don't know how I was okay to be able to see this man closely, intimately, to be zocheh, to sit hours with him and have discussions with him. But every time I sat with him, I got such chizuk, such strength in one specific element. This is what a member of Am Israel is supposed to be. Rambam, in his philosophy, puts a tremendous emphasis on Nibu'ah, prophecy. And that the height of human achievement in terms of Israel is to achieve Nibu'ah. And Rambam speaks about the different levels of Nibu'ah, the different strengths of Nibu'ah, and there are certain levels that we may not perceive as being Nibu'ah per se. But nonetheless, Rambam points out, when you see this in a person, these are the first steps in the derech to Nibu'ah. I want to read for a moment, very quickly, how Rambam describes in the Moreh Nebuchim the initial step of a Navi. תחילת מעלות הנבואה שילווה את האדם עזר אלוהי יעוררו ויזרזו לעשות טובה גדולה בעלת ערך כגון השפעת טובה על אנשים רבים וימצא מצד עצמו לכך התעוררות ודחיפה לפעולה וזה נקרא רוח השם. Rambam says the initial steps of a Navi is a person who feels driven by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that there is a drive that is pushing him to act for the betterment of people, in order to be able to do good for Rabbim, for the multitudes of his nation. And it's not just a feeling of, I want to do something good. It is a push, dechisa, it's something that's driving him from above. To the point that Rambam says that's called Ruach Hashem. Morai v'Rabotai, Ahai v'Re'ai, I'm telling you today, Mr. Sam Catton, Haya Baruch Hashem, I have never met in my life, I've met many, many people. A person who's not a Talmid Hacham in terms of his the way that people recognize, not Hacham Bashi, doesn't have an official rabbinical position, but an Adam Meha'am, a person of the people that had such a driving force, always thinking, never resting, what do we do to make things better for Am Yisrael? It floored me. I was in awe of it every time I sat in front of him. Now, the Hachamim tell us that elements of Nibu'ah, even these most basic elements, cannot be shoreh on a person, cannot come onto a person unless they are sameach, unless they're happy. Mr. Catton went through many hardships in his life. But I can tell you another thing about sitting in front of him. Mr. Catton was a person who, like no other that I know, had a happiness in mitzvah, a happiness as being part of Israel, in where it simply was his identity. Mitzvot was his identity. It wasn't something that he had to do, or something he had to accomplish, or something he was meticulous in the way that we hear about people. It was his identity. That was who he was. Never did he look at a mitzvah as an intrusion. He looked at a mitzvah as the very person that he was. And he did it with simcha. If there's a person that I know in my life that I could say about him, Abdu Tashem bin Simcha Bo Lefana Bernana, that a person kept it was him. There's people we see that are meticulous in mitzvot. They do them to the letter of the law. They go out early in the morning and they come home late at night. But simcha, joy in a mitzvah, happiness in a mitzvah, that he was mekayem, la'avod et Hashem b'simcha u'tuv levav. Morai v'Rabotai, it simply was an awesome thing for me to behold. And I draw a tremendous amount of strength from it, and I know that anybody that knew him knows exactly what I'm talking about. I put that pasuk up in my shul after knowing him. There's a lot of pasukim, Shabiti et Hashem and Endechim, but Abdu et Hashem b'simcha bo lefana b'rana Morai v'Rabotai. I'm going to say today, perhaps it's a little bold of me, we've forgotten. I saw it in my grandfather, Alav Shalom, how happy he was to set the table for Shabbat. And I saw it in Mr. Catton. The loss of Mr. Catton is not just the loss of a great man. To me, and why I sat on my couch after I hung up the phone with his grandson Morris when he told me of his passing and cried uncontrollably, is because it's a loss of a generation, of an approach to Torah, of a closeness to Borei Olam, that Morai v'Rabotai, we are losing. Rabbi Yochanan, it's told in Gemara Barakot of He, Mudis al-En, he went to visit Rabbi al-Azar bin Beyda. Rabbi al-Azar bin Beyda was sick, and he was a poor man. And he lived in a dark house. And Rabbi Yochanan came in to visit him. And says that he lifted his sleeve. The entire house was bright with light. And he turned to Rabbi al-Azar and he saw Rabbi al-Azar crying. And he said, Rabbi al-Azar, why are you crying? Are you concerned that you didn't learn enough Torah? Khamim said, the whole thing that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is looking for is your heart. You won't finish. You're worried about children. I had 10 children. and I saw them all pass in front of me. Hadin Garmadi Isra. This is the bone of the tent. I'll be menahem, we can go on, there's life. Rabbi al-Azhar said to him, that's not what I'm crying about. I'm crying about Hay Shufra Jabale Afra. That beauty, your beauty. Rabbi Hanan lived a long life. He was the remaining element of the old elders of Yerushalayim that the Hachamim say they insulted the sun because of their beauty. This is going to be in the Afar. Rabbi Yohanan said, that I'll try for you. That, Morai Rabotai, is what we lost. Hay Shufra, the face of our fathers, the face of our heritage, the face of our soul, of our makor, of where we come from, of our identity. We lost that in Mr. Catton. And it's irreplaceable. All we can do is to remember how he lived. And it's not an easy thing. Realistically speaking, it's not an easy thing. We're living in a world where Simchat Mitzvah is not central. It's Atiyat Mitzvah, Dud Mitzvah. Get it done properly, tenfold, meticulously, to the letter of the law. Simcha, you can't teach. You can't teach it. You either feel it, you know it, you see it as being you, or it's not. You can pretend Simcha, but genuine Simcha can't be bought, can't be taught. You have to recognize only that the Torah and our relationship with Borei Olam is who we are. It's what it means to be Israel. And there's nothing else. And that brings joy. And that was Mr. Catton. How tremendously we were zocheh to know him. How tremendously we were zocheh to speak with him, to see him work. And I have to say in front of everybody today, I have to apologize in front of everybody today that I didn't finish the book before he was able to see it finished. Unfortunately, there's Tivdot Tzibur, there's the Knis, there's the school, there's a tremendous amount of work to do. But it rips my heart that I wasn't able to show him the finished product of the book. That we went through every halakha, and he would sit and I would read him the halachot, and he would smile, and he would finish them for me. And I know that he's going to see it finished, and he's going to be sameach, and the lechaim that he was planning in the tawahid, we will have, and his ruach will be there. And the yiratzon that his zechut should stand for his family, for his children and grandchildren, and for our kihad, because we needed it. We're going to pray, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to pray Mincha. Please stay because we're going to have some more speakers right after Mincha. Like 10 minutes. We ask for quiet during Mincha so we can pray properly. Please, everybody close your cell phones. In the past few days, I have experienced an outpouring of love and affection for my father, which has been exhilarating, inspiring, and a great source of comfort. It is hard to imagine how one person could have such an impact on so many people. Much has been said about his contributions to our community and Klal Yisrael. I would, however, like to share with you my memories of him as the patriarch of our family, and particularly as a father and a husband. In 1939, my mother Ray, Aliyah Hashalom, was about 6 months pregnant with me. My father, on a business trip,
Went by cattle boat to the Philippines. A 1-month trip. And in very rough conditions. It wasn't a luxury liner like we get today. I was born while he was there. Now, in those days, overseas communications were very difficult. There were no faxes, emails, telephones, airplanes going to bring any information. So he could not find out about my birth until after my bris. And he did not see me until I was 3 months old. But what a father he was. Together with my mom, they placed my brother Eddie, alav shalom, and my welfare above anything and everything. Although they struggled financially, they spared nothing and raising us was their first priority. We had the best clothes. Always were dressed like twins, as many of you have seen the picture. And we had the finest yeshiva education, regardless of course. When I was 5 years old, I was enrolled in Yeshiva of Flatbush, the first Syrian in Yeshiva of Flatbush, which was very difficult for me, as I had never left home before. And I was now thrust alone into a strange environment. I was terribly homesick, and I was crying. The first morning when I got there, when we went to recess, I was standing alone in the schoolyard, and I caught a glimpse of my father hiding behind a tree on Coney Island Avenue. He was watching me. He was checking to see that I was okay. I made believe I didn't see him, because I didn't want to make him feel uncomfortable. Yesterday we were visited by one of his secretaries, Ellen Adis, and she was telling me an interesting story that my father told her. And that story was the same story about my father and his father 90 years ago in Atlantic City. I kept my story a secret from my father. I never told him. And I stored it in my mind all these years. And in recent years, I was waiting till Me'ad Asrim, and I had it stored in my mind that this was one of the things I would use to eulogize my father and show him how caring he was. As we grew up, he taught us the love of Torah and Eretz Yisrael. I'll never forget sitting with him near the radio on a Friday afternoon in November 1947, when the United Nations was voting to issue the partition of Palestine. I said, Dad, Shabbat in another half hour. How will we know the outcome of the vote? Will we be a state or not? How will we know before Shabbat? He said, don't worry. Hashem will see to it that the vote finishes in time. Sure enough, the vote carried. The partition was made 5 minutes before Shabbat, with tears in his eyes. He made us stand up. We sang the Hatikvah. And then Dad called to inside, Ray, light the candles. And off we went to shul. As busy and involved as he was in so many matters, his family always came first. I will never forget his respect, love, and fine treatment for my mother. He adored her and placed her on a pedestal. When sitting at the dinner table, he would dish her first, before himself, and not eat before she started. After all, she was his queen. Once we grew up, we were married, we raised our own families. He showed the same love to each of his daughters-in-law, his grandchildren, and his great-grandchildren. he inspired each of them to follow in his footsteps. And they reciprocated this love when they flew down last week to Florida. Came in the morning, spent a few hours with him, prayed, said Tehillim, went right back to the airport and flew home. It also shows in the eulogies you heard from them, and you will be hearing at the funeral, and you'll be hearing today and in another few weeks. And also it shows in them how they are now assuming the leadership in continuing his work in the publication of his books. As his good friend Asi Harari always tells me, he was the link to our past. But that link will remain intact through the books he published and the books he wrote, and the numerous stories he always told everybody about their past. My parents taught us the lesson to keep the family united. We always shared Shabbat, holidays, happy occasions, sad occasions. We were always together. They were the glue that kept us together. In order to maintain their legacy, we must continue in their path and remain united. Diane and Frida, I love you both. And I'm so grateful that you followed in the footsteps of the family and cared for him so unselfishly. And I'm confident that with your help and everybody else's, we'll remain together and united. I would also like to acknowledge and thank the following women who helped care for my father in recent years: Minna Hannon, Ellen Adis, Gloria Mahana, Donna Shabbat, Monica, and Odelia. As you can see, I am grateful, and I thank Hashem for blessing me with the privilege of having such a loving and caring father for 66 years. By following in his footsteps, my father's footsteps, his legacy will remain alive and inspire us and the community together. Dad, I will miss you. I'll never forget you. I will always love you. Go in peace. You have earned your rest in Gadayade. Reunited with Mom and Eddie, Tahat Kanfir al-Shekhinah. Reshut Rabbanim, Reshut HaKahar. In this week's parasha, Parashat Tishalach, we read about Bnei Israel's battle with Amalek. Moshe instructed Yehoshua to prepare men to fight with Amalek, while Moshe ascended to the top of a hill along with Aaron and Hod. And the pasuk states, "V'haya ka'asher yarim Moshe yado legabar Israel." It happened that when Moshe raised his hand, Israel was stronger. The Mishnah in Masechet Rosh Hashanah asks, "V'chi yadav sheMoshe osot mechama o shobrot mechama, ela lomar lach כל זמן שהיו ישראל מסתכלים כלפי מעלה ומשעבדים את ליבם לאביהם שבשמיים היו מתגברים." Can it be that the hands of Moshe make or break a war? Rather, to tell us that while Bnei Israel looked skywards and enslaved their hearts to their Father in heaven, they were victorious. Moshe, the ultimate leader of the Jewish people, served as an inspiration to them to reconnect with God. My grandfather, Sammy Catton, Alera Shalom, a congregant of this synagogue, Bnei Yitzhak, served as one of our spiritual leaders. We can all remember the prayer services here on the holiest day of the year, Yom Kippur, when we beseech God for forgiveness. I can vividly recall how Grandpa would ascend this very podium and orchestrate the opening prayer of this holy day, Kal Nidreh. In his mid-90s, he would motion with his hands and lead the congregation in a unified prayer. Towards the end of Yom Kippur, during Ne'ilah, he would rise once again, arms raised to the heavens, and re-energize and refocus our prayers while the gates of heaven were closing. Just as Moshe's devotion to Hashem served as inspiration to Bnei Israel, so did Grandpa. Another beautiful memory I have of Grandpa is of our weekly Havdalah in the summertime by my mother's house. Usually, my brother-in-law, Hacham Selim Dweck, Alav Shalom, was appointed by Grandpa to say the blessing. Once in a while, I would say it. After saying the Havdalah, he would joke around with me, complimenting me, while saying, "Not as good as Selim, but still good," followed by a chuckle. Grandpa's energy, wit, and love of mitzvot made me want these moments to last forever. I remember the sparkle in his eye, watching his children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren observing the mitzvot and enjoying them together. The Pesach Seder was one of Grandpa's favorite nights of the year. He would make sure to be well rested for the long and active night ahead. With his uncanny wit, Grandpa shared insights into the Haggadah as well as experience of past Seders, some of them over 75 years ago. All of the Cattons will miss the ever-changing stories and history of the famous Apikomin polka dot handkerchief, supposedly a family heirloom, passed on from one generation to the next for over 200 years. He was always so proud of his breaking up of Apikomin into the shape of a dalit, resembling the path that Bnei Israel traveled upon their crossing of Yam Suf. He was in his glory, watching the children sing, question, and participate in the mitzvot of Leil HaSeder. 7 weeks following Pesach is the holiday of Shavuot. Grandpa admired the Sephardic scholars, poets, and musicians of the ages. One of these was Rabbi Shlomo ibn Gabirol, who was in a class of his own in the field of secular and religious poetry. At the young age of 16, he compiled the famous Azharot, where he incorporated all of Taryag Mitzvot, the 613 commandments, into one poem to be read and sung on the holiday of Shavuot, the anniversary of Matan Torah. On both days of Shavuot, our family would get together to read and sing the Azharot. We would take turns singing a stanza or two and would sing some together. However, between every other line, Grandpa would interrupt and provide a new perush about the mitzvah being read. It was a real treat. I have selected to read the last stanza of Mitzvot Aseh, the positive commandments, which is read on the first day of Shavuot. And one who is careful to obey the laws of Torah will come near and receive a great reward for observing them. With the sweet light of the Shekhinah, the righteous shall be crowned. As stated in Masechet Berachot, Tzadikim Yoshim, V'aterotehem Berashehem, V'nehenim Meziv HaShekhinah. The righteous, sitting with crowns upon their heads, enjoying the splendor of the Shekhinah, the ultimate spiritual enlightenment and knowledge of Hashem. This is the greatest reward that one can receive. Happy is he who merits it. This is the image I have of Grandpa. With every holiday came one of Grandpa's books. He helped fine-tune our prayers and paid attention to every detail with the highest of standards and provided an aesthetic quality to the Sidur HaMachzor. Every page was meticulously laid out, the bindings, the fonts, and colors, all hand-selected for an enhanced spiritual experience. As I mentioned, Grandpa admired and studied the great Sephardic scholars and poets of the past, and extensively quoted from Maran, Rabbi Yosef Karo, Harambam, Rabbi Shlomo ibn Gabirol, Rabbi Yehuda HaLevi, to name a few. He was a pashtan, practical, rational interpretation first, and appreciated its depth, something most of us take for granted and glance over, to quickly delve into the Midrash and other esoteric commentaries before having a sound understanding of the scripture based on the Peshat. Grandpa was a continuation of these great scholars, a reflection of what it means to be a Sephardic Jew living in modern times. His approach to learning and education was curious, active, and engaging, quoting directly from the sources, presenting different opinions, and then allowing the individual to arrive at their own conclusions. If he didn't recognize or understand a word or idea, he diligently researched books, essays, and consulted with other scholars to become more knowledgeable in the subject matter. Underlying in this approach was a commitment to the truth, a humility of his own knowledge, and a recognition of the immortality of this knowledge beyond one man's lifetime or power, thus teaching others how to learn for themselves. What always impressed me about Grandpa and Grandma Ray, Aliyah Shalom, was how they valued education, both religious and secular above all else, and sacrificed for their children to receive, as Grandpa would say, an A1 top-notch education. Another thing I will always remember Grandpa for is reflected in Masechet Avot, Rabbi Matijah ben Heresh Omer, Haveh Matim B'Shlom Kol Adam. Take the initiative in greeting any man you meet. Grandpa lived by this expression. He would stand up, extend his hand, and greet us before we could get a word in. He would always ask me how I was doing, and immediately followed the initial question, asking about the well-being of my wife and family. Always. Since my father died, the bond between Grandpa and I grew stronger. We both served to one another as a link to my father, and both recognized and admired aspects of my father's personality in each other, and this served as a great sense of comfort to both of us. In Parashat Beyda, while Abraham is walking with his son Yitzhak to perform the Akedah, it says, "Vayikach Abraham et aseh ha'olah, vayasem Yitzhak beno, vayikach ha'esh ve'et ha'ma'achelet, vayelechu shenehem yahdav." As Grandpa repeatedly explained to me, despite the age difference, there was no generation gap between Abraham and Yitzhak. They both instinctively and intuitively understood one another. I am fortunate enough to have had a similar relationship with Grandpa. A few summers back, I was going through a challenging career change. We lived together during the summer, and I had the privilege to seek Grandpa's advice on a daily basis. He was there for me every step of the way, with encouragement and objective advice. He could almost read my mind and mood, and knew how to engage me in a conversation and help me express my thoughts. Grandpa would listen patiently to all that I had to say without interruption. He would then take a moment or the night to digest the issue and would respond with clear advice and a plan. I'm going to miss these precious moments, and I thank him for guiding me through these times. Masechet Avot describes 7 traits of a wise man that I feel properly reflects Grandpa's wisdom. שבעה דברים בקודם ושבעה בחכם. החכם אינו מדבר לפני מישהו גדול ממנו בחוכמה, ואינו נכנס לתוך דברי חברו, ואינו נבהל להשיב. שואל כעניין ומשיב כהלכה, ואומר על ראשון ראשון ועל אחרון אחרון, ועל מה שלא שמע אומר לא שמעתי, ומודה על האמת בחילופיהן בקודם. 7 things are typical in a cloth, and 7 in a wise man. The wise man does not speak before one who is greater than he in wisdom. He does not break into the speech of his fellow man. He is not in a rush to reply. He questions to the point and responds properly. He speaks of first things first and last things last. About something he has not learned, he says, "I have not learned it." And he acknowledges the truth. Unfortunately, my father is not here to eulogize his father and speak of his love and admiration for him. However, I came across a letter he had written to my grandfather in July of 1997, celebrating Grandpa's 87th birthday. I will conclude with this letter, an expression of love from father to son. Dear Dad, wishing you a very happy birthday and many, many more. Both of you and Mom have been the guiding lights and inspiration for me, Beyda, my children and grandchildren. You are the best role models anyone can ever hope to emulate. We are forever grateful for your caring, love, and devotion, plus all the sacrifices which you have made for us. Just imagine how proud I have always been and continue to be when I say, I am Sam Catton's son. I pray for many healthy and happy years for you and Mom. All my love, Eddie. My sister Rochelle in Israel also would like me to read some words on her behalf. It's impossible to capture Grandpa's greatness in a few words. I will try to speak more of the man and less of his accomplishments, in a way to try to figure out how one man has managed to live such a blessed and fulfilled life. Grandpa was blessed with a strong sense of self as an individual and as a Syrian Jew. He knew where he came from, which helped him figure out where he was headed. I think, in retrospect, that was his message to us. I will elaborate shortly. I know little of Grandpa's parents and early upbringing. I do know that from an early age, his learning of Torah became pivotal in his development as a person. He had the zechut of learning Chacham Matlub Abadi, Shalom, whom he greatly revered and quoted till his end days. Grandpa's belief in Hashem and Yirat Shamayim was unequivocal and unwavering. It was unfortunately put to the test several times with various life tragedies. Throughout life's challenges, he remained devout and devoted to God. He had a very humble quality and always thanked God for helping him accomplish all that he did. His religious path was an anchor that provided strength in all aspects of his life. I mention his belief because I think it propelled everything he did. Grandpa was a dedicated man, first and foremost to God, equally to his wife, my Grandma Ray, his siblings, in-law family, his children, my Uncle Harry and Father Eddie, grandchildren and great-grandchildren. I think Grandpa's wisest decision in his life was to marry my grandmother, Ray. It is impossible to mention Grandpa without talking a bit about Grandma, Mother, as he referred to her. My grandparents worked hard to create a beautiful, harmonious marriage. As we all know, a good marriage takes a lot of effort. Their marriage provided a very solid basis for the future of our family. I remember when Selim and I married, we spoke with my grandparents at length about the key to a successful marriage. To this day, I remember the conversation. As they spoke to us, they looked at each other like bashful teenagers and sheepishly smiled. Their relationship was our model and goal. Beyond love, they had such mutual respect and adoration. Grandpa was able to accomplish all that he did outside the home because he had a helpmate and an Eshet Hayil backing him. One needs only to know my Uncle Harry or to have known my Father Eddie to realize that they were raised by extraordinary people. While family was Grandpa's priority, his concept of family extended far beyond his immediate family to the community at large. He was blessed with the gift of insight and foresight. He knew that the only way for our community to sustain its unique and rich minhagim was to preserve and keep alive the past. Just as his own upbringing helped dictate his future, so too did he realize that the future of our community lies in its past. Grandpa's goal was to perpetuate a unified community, just as it was in Halab. Last Pesach, I had the privilege of being at the Catton family seder that he led. He mentioned a short about Torah that he also mentioned in the foreword to his latest book. I will mention it briefly as I think it really captured his ideology. There is a question as to why Bnei Israel receive the Torah at this moment. After all, weren't they at the 49th level of impurity in Egypt? What made them worthy of receiving the Torah so quickly afterwards? At Har Sinai it is written, Vayihan Sham Yisrael neged Har. The nation encamped against the mountain. Vayihan is written in the singular instead of the plural. Rashi notes, Am Echad Belev Echad. One people with one heart. When we are reunited, we are worthy of receiving from God and worthy of being partners with Him. When we are divided, we destroy ourselves. This has been tested throughout history. The idea of working towards unity was Grandpa's impetus and lifelong goal. Obviously, family unity was a first priority for him and Grandma. The fruits of their labor are evident today. I regard my cousins almost as siblings. Grandpa's involvement in the notion of Am Echad started in the 1930s with his involvement in the World Zionist Organization as aid to Israel. Anyone who knew Grandpa knew that when he spoke of Eretz Israel, he would undoubtedly have tears in his eyes. I recall that when Salim and I decided to make Aliyah, we did not know how to tell Grandpa. Salim consulted with Rabbi Aluf. We rehearsed what we were going to say countless times. I let Salim do all the talking because I was too choked up, as the decision to leave family is not an easy one. What was Grandpa's immediate reaction to what Salim said? He blessed us that Hashem should bless us and watch over us and be with us every step of the way. After a long discussion, Grandpa turned to Salim and told him, I want you to go, but I am torn, because we need you here. We need rabbis like you to guide the community. Grandpa was wise and understood that for Salim, the mitzvah of living in Eretz Israel was of primary importance. Grandpa became a historian late in life. The Mahsurim, Gizmonim books, and historical accounts were his way of preserving the richest of our community. As said, one nation with one heart. In terms of the Mahsurim, it is the heart that opens up in prayer. Unified prayer was the goal. In the closing line of the introduction to the Sidur Kol Yaakov, he wrote, our deepest gratitude is to the Almighty for helping us to finish this project. We pray that this volume of holy devotion will inspire all of us to turn our hearts to our merciful Father in heaven. I hope these prayers are answered. In my opinion, Grandpa's success in becoming such a revered community member and leader was his ability to truly be interested in people and respectful of all. He had a gift of knowing how to engage a person in conversation. I am sure most of us can recall Grandpa telling us a story that a family member was sincerely asking us questions about ourselves. Grandpa was blessed with knowing people and what they were capable of giving. Just as he demanded much from himself, he expected from those around him. He was not afraid of asking others for what he needed from them, a sign of a psychologically healthy adult. In terms of the grandkids, he was so good at articulating to each of us what our strengths were and to play up our strengths. He knew how to make us feel good about ourselves, and he also did a beautiful thing of sharing it with others. I can hear Grandpa talking to me about my sister Melanie, how attentive she is to our children, and how selflessly she gives before people ask, and about my brother Sammy, how gentle, kind, and humble he is. Grandpa also pointed out the areas that needed working on, and tried his hardest to help us individually in any way he could. It is unusual to have a grandparent, let alone a parent, so involved in your day-to-day life. I will miss this terribly. There is so much to say about Grandpa that a few pages focusing on a very narrow aspect of his life just doesn't give it justice. I want to conclude with gratitude. Gratitude for having known such a man, for having been able to witness true Yirat Shamayim, fervent passion, drive and dedication, love and support. On a personal note, Grandpa has been a source of inspiration for me. His bright, optimistic attitude has cheered up many dreary days. His ability to think progressively and innovatively while maintaining tradition and custom has helped me find balance in life, and his wisdom and ability to see the whole picture have guided me along my path. There is much I will miss. Amen.